The Royal Albert Hall sparkled with anticipation on that crisp November evening. Golden chandeliers cast warm light across the red velvet seats, while cameras flashed outside as London's elite arrived for the annual Royal Variety performance. After 2 long years away from this cherished tradition, the Prince and Princess of Wales were finally returning to one of their favorite royal events. Kate stepped out of the royal car, her emerald green velvet gown catching the light like a jewel. The deep V-neck dress hugged her figure perfectly, while William looked equally elegant in his classic black velvet tuxedo. They had coordinated their outfits without even discussing it, a small sign of how in sync they had become during Kate's recovery journey. The crowd erupted in cheers as the royal couple appeared on the red carpet. Kate's sun-kissed blonde hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders, lighter than it had been in months. The change was subtle but noticeable to those who followed the royals closely. Her smile was radiant, genuine, and filled with relief. This was more than just another royal engagement. It was a symbol of her return to the life she loved. As they made their way toward the entrance, William placed his hand gently on Kate's back, a protective gesture that spoke volumes about the challenges they had faced together. The past year had tested their family in ways they never could have imagined. Kate's cancer diagnosis had turned their world upside down, forcing them to make impossible decisions about what to tell their children and how to maintain some sense of normalcy. The months of chemotherapy had been grueling. Not just physically, but emotionally. There were days when Kate wondered if she would ever feel like herself again. The treatments left her exhausted, and watching Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis try to understand why their mother was so tired broke her heart in ways she hadn't expected. But tonight was different. Tonight, she felt strong again. The doctors had given her the all-clear just weeks earlier, confirming what she had hoped to hear. She was in remission. The word itself felt like a gift, a second chance at the life she had temporarily lost. As they approached the entrance to the Royal Albert Hall, Kate spotted 2 young girls waiting with flowers. 9-year-old twins Emily and Olivia Edwards stood nervously in their best dresses, clutching beautiful bouquets picked from the Royal Variety Charity's residential care home. Their eyes widened as the royal couple approached. Kate immediately softened, bending down slightly to meet the girls at their level. She had always had a natural way with children, perhaps because she never forgot what it felt like to be young and overwhelmed by adult conversations. The twins reminded her so much of Charlotte, with their bright eyes and shy smiles. "Hello there," Kate said warmly, accepting the flowers with genuine gratitude. "These are absolutely beautiful. Did you pick them yourselves?" The girls nodded eagerly, their nervousness beginning to fade as Kate's natural warmth put them at ease. William stood beside his wife, watching with admiration as she connected with the children. This was the Kate he had fallen in love with all those years ago at university, the woman who could make anyone feel special with just a few kind words. "Are you 2 fans of Paddington?" Kate asked, her voice taking on a slightly conspiratorial tone. She had heard that tonight's performance would feature an exclusive showing from Paddington the Musical, composed by Tom Fletcher from McFly. It was one of the highlights of the evening's entertainment. Both girls nodded enthusiastically. Paddington Bear had been a beloved character for generations of British children, and the new musical had captured imaginations across the country. Their faces lit up with excitement at the mention of the famous bear. It was then that Kate felt a familiar pang in her chest, as she looked at these 2 excited faces. She couldn't help but think of her own children back home at Adelaide Cottage. Prince George, now 12 years old and growing more serious about his future role each day. Princess Charlotte, 10 and full of the same spirited energy that Kate had possessed at that age. And little Prince Louis, 7 years old and still young enough to believe in magic. The truth was, all 3 of her children had been devastated when they learned they wouldn't be attending tonight's performance. The Royal Variety Show had always been an adult affair, but that didn't make the disappointment any easier for young hearts to bear, especially when they discovered that Paddington would be there. Kate's mind drifted back to the conversation she and William had with their children just days earlier. They had been sitting in the drawing room at Adelaide Cottage, the autumn light filtering through the windows as Kate broke the news about the Royal Variety performance. "But Mama," Charlotte had protested, her lower lip trembling slightly, "we love Paddington. Can't we just come for that part?" George, ever the responsible older brother, had tried to comfort his sister. "Charlotte, you know these events are for grown-ups. Maybe they'll show it on television later." But it was Louis who had been the most heartbroken. At 7, he was still young enough to wear his emotions on his sleeve. "It's not fair," he had whispered, tears forming in his eyes. "We never get to see the fun things." Kate had felt her heart break a little at his words. The past year had already taken so much from her children. They had watched their mother struggle through chemotherapy, had tiptoed around the house when she was too tired to play, had whispered their worries to each other when they thought no one was listening. The last thing she wanted was to deny them another joy. But William had been firm, and Kate knew he was right. The Royal Variety performance was an important royal duty, not a family outing. There would be hundreds of people, flashing cameras, and a schedule that wouldn't accommodate 3 energetic children. Besides, security would be a nightmare with all 3 Wales children in attendance. So they had made a decision, one that felt necessary but still tugged at Kate's heartstrings. They would tell a small, harmless lie to make the disappointment easier to bear. Standing now before these 2 young girls, Kate felt the weight of that decision. As she looked into their eager faces, she knew she was about to share something that would have to remain a secret. Something that her own children could never know, because it would only make their disappointment worse. The moment felt significant in a way that surprised her. After months of medical appointments, treatments, and careful management of information, Kate had grown accustomed to keeping secrets. But this one felt different. This was about protecting her children's feelings, not their mother's health. William noticed the subtle change in his wife's expression and moved closer, offering silent support. He knew that look, had seen it many times during Charlotte's difficult phases, or when Louis had one of his emotional moments. Kate was thinking about their children, wondering if they were making the right choices as parents. The twins were still looking up at them expectantly, waiting for more conversation about Paddington. The performance was set to begin soon, and Kate knew that once they took their seats in the royal box, there would be no more time for intimate conversations. This moment, right here on the red carpet, was when she would have to acknowledge the secret she was keeping. As the cameras flashed around them and the crowd continued to cheer, Kate made a decision. She would tell these girls something that she couldn't tell her own children, something that would have to remain hidden, at least for now. A secret that revealed the tender heart of a mother who was still learning to balance her duties as a royal with her love for her family. The November air was crisp against her skin, but Kate felt warm standing there with William and these 2 sweet girls. Tonight was about more than just attending a performance. It was about stepping back into her role as Princess of Wales, about showing the world that she was strong enough to handle whatever came next. But first, she had to share the secret that was weighing on her heart. Kate took a gentle breath and leaned closer to the twins, her voice dropping to a soft, confidential tone that only they could hear above the excitement of the red carpet. The moment felt suspended in time, as if the cameras and crowds had faded away, leaving just a mother sharing something precious with 2 young girls who reminded her so much of her own daughter. "My kiddies will be very sad," she said quietly, bringing her finger to her lips in a gesture that the girls immediately understood meant secrecy. "We're going to have to keep it a big secret." The words carried the weight of genuine emotion as she continued. "They were very sad not to be joining us. The twins' eyes grew wide with the importance of being trusted with such royal confidence. They nodded solemnly, understanding instinctively that they were being included in something special. For Kate, sharing this moment felt both liberating and heartbreaking. Here she was, confessing to two strangers what she couldn't fully admit to her own children. William watched his wife with quiet admiration, recognizing the careful way she was navigating this delicate moment. He knew how much Kate had struggled with the decision to attend tonight without bringing George, Charlotte, and Louis. The guilt had been eating at her for days, even though logically she knew it was the right choice. The truth was more complicated than what Kate could reveal to these young girls. Just 3 nights earlier, the Wales family had gathered in their cozy sitting room at Adelaide Cottage for what William privately called difficult conversation time. These were the moments when he and Kate had to be parents first and royals second, making decisions that protected their children while still honoring their responsibilities to the crown. "But why can't children come to the royal variety show?" Charlotte had asked, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she sensed her parents weren't telling her everything. At 10 years old, she was becoming increasingly perceptive about adult decisions that seemed unfair. Kate had looked at William helplessly. How could they explain that technically children could attend if the royal family chose to bring them, but that the logistics would be overwhelming? How could they make their daughter understand that sometimes being royal meant making sacrifices that other families didn't have to make? William had stepped in with what they had decided was a necessary simplification of the truth. The royal variety performance is traditionally an adult event, Charlotte. It's been that way for over 100 years. The performers and organizers plan everything around having grown-ups in the audience. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the complete truth either. The reality was that they could have brought the children if they had really wanted to. Security would have been more complex. The evening would have required different timing, and there would have been significant additional coordination with the venue and the charity organizers. But it was possible. The deciding factor hadn't been tradition or logistics, though. It had been Kate's health and energy levels. Despite being declared in remission, she still tired more easily than before her cancer treatment. The thought of managing 3 excited children during such a high-profile public appearance felt overwhelming, especially when she was still rebuilding her stamina for royal duties. But they couldn't explain that to George, Charlotte, and Louis without raising new worries about their mother's health. So they had chosen to present the restriction as absolute rather than discretionary. Louis had been the most difficult to console. At 7, he was old enough to understand disappointment, but still young enough to express it without filter. "It's not fair that we never get to see anything fun," he had said, his little face scrunched up with frustration. "Why do we have to be royal if it means we miss all the good stuff?" The question had hit Kate like a physical blow. During her cancer treatment, she had spent countless hours wondering if her children resented the restrictions that came with their royal status. Did they understand that being part of the Wales family meant constant balances between duty and desire? Were they happy with the life they had been born into? George had tried to comfort his younger brother with characteristic maturity. "Louis, we get to do lots of things other children don't get to do. Remember when we met the football players? And we get to live in a palace sometimes." But Charlotte had been quieter than usual, which always worried Kate more than tears or protests. Her daughter was a deep thinker, someone who processed disappointment internally before expressing it. Later that evening, Kate had found Charlotte sitting on her bed, staring out the window at the gardens. "Mama," Charlotte had said without turning around, "do you think Paddington will be disappointed that we're not there to watch him?" The question had broken Kate's heart in a way she wasn't prepared for. Charlotte's concern wasn't just about missing the performance. It was about feeling like she was letting down a beloved character who had brought her family so much joy over the years. Kate had sat down beside her daughter, choosing her words carefully. "Oh, sweetheart, I think Paddington would understand completely. He knows that sometimes we can't be everywhere we want to be. But you know what? I bet he'll be thinking about children like you who love him, even if you're not in the audience." Now, standing on the red carpet with these two excited twins, Kate felt the full weight of that conversation. She was about to see Paddington perform, something her own children desperately wanted to experience. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was sharing this confidence with strangers while keeping the experience secret from George, Charlotte, and Louis. The twins presented William with a program for the evening's entertainment, their ceremony and politeness clearly coached but genuinely sweet. "Thank you very much," William said warmly, adding, "You two look very pretty tonight." When one of the girls, Olivia, shyly mentioned that her favorite singer was Billie Eilish, William's face lit up with approval. "You have excellent taste," he said, glancing at Kate with amusement. "It's very nice to see you both. You're very smiley, you two." The interaction gave Kate a moment to collect herself, but her mind kept returning to the secret she was now carrying. Tonight, she would see Paddington the Musical, performed by an incredibly talented cast with music composed by Tom Fletcher. She would watch comedy performances, hear beautiful songs, and experience the magic that made the Royal Variety Performance one of her favorite annual events. And tomorrow, when George asked about the show over breakfast, she would have to carefully edit her enthusiasm. When Charlotte wondered if the performers were good, Kate would have to share just enough to seem informed without making her daughter feel worse about missing it. When Louis wanted to know if Paddington was as wonderful as he imagined, Kate would have to find words that honored his love for the character without highlighting what he had missed. The practical implications of keeping this secret were just beginning to dawn on her. There would be photographs in the newspapers, probably some showing her and William meeting Paddington. There might be video footage that captured her obvious enjoyment of the performances. How would she explain her detailed knowledge of the show to her children without admitting how much she had loved seeing what they had wanted to see? Kate felt William's hand touch her elbow gently, a subtle signal that it was time to move inside. The formal presentation was complete, and the performance was scheduled to begin soon. Around them, other dignitaries and VIP guests were making their way into the historic venue. "It was lovely meeting you both," Kate said to the twins, meaning every word. "Thank you so much for the beautiful flowers and for being part of tonight's special evening." As they walked away from the girls and toward the entrance, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that she had just committed to something more significant than a simple white lie. She was about to spend an entire evening enjoying experiences that her children desperately wanted to share, and then she would have to pretend that the joy she felt was somehow less than what it actually was. The Royal Albert Hall's grand interior welcomed them with its familiar warmth and grandeur. Red velvet seats rose in elegant tiers, the ornate ceiling soaring above them like a cathedral dedicated to the arts. Kate had always loved this venue, with its perfect acoustics and sense of history. Tonight, though, every beautiful detail reminded her of what George, Charlotte, and Louis were missing. As they made their way to the royal box, Kate realized that her secret wasn't just about protecting her children from disappointment. It was about protecting herself from guilt. She wanted to enjoy tonight, to celebrate her return to public life, to revel in the joy of being healthy and present for this beloved tradition. But enjoying it while her children were at home, wondering what they were missing, felt somehow selfish. The performance was about to begin, and Kate knew that once the lights dimmed and the first act took the stage, she would be swept up in the magic that made the Royal Variety Performance so special. The question was whether she could allow herself to fully experience that magic, or whether the secret she was keeping would color every moment with the bittersweet awareness of what her children didn't know they were missing. As they settled into their seats and the audience rose in respectful acknowledgement of their arrival, Kate made a silent promise to herself. She would find a way to make this right with George, Charlotte, and Louis. Perhaps not tonight, and perhaps not by sharing exactly what she had experienced, but somehow. Because keeping secrets from the people you love most, even with the best intentions, was harder than she had anticipated. The lights dimmed in the Royal Albert Hall, and Katherine Jenkins's powerful voice filled the space as she sang the national anthem. Kate stood with her hand over her heart, feeling the familiar surge of pride and responsibility that came with these formal moments. But tonight, as the music swirled around her, she found herself thinking about the 3 empty seats that existed only in her imagination, spaces where her children might have sat if circumstances were different. As the evening unfolded, Kate was transported by performance after performance. Jessie J took the stage and performed her new song, I'll Never Know Why, her voice carrying raw emotion that resonated deeply with Kate. During the backstage meet and greet that would come later, Jessie would give Kate a spontaneous hug, one mother to another who had walked through the darkness of cancer and emerged into the light. Mom to Mom, who has just recently gone through cancer, I just wanted to give her a hug, Jessie would tell reporters later, and Kate would feel the profound connection that came with shared survival. But it was when the cast of Paddington the Musical took the stage that Kate felt her heart truly ache with the weight of her secret. Tom Fletcher's compositions brought the beloved bear to life with such warmth and whimsy that Kate found herself leaning forward in her seat, completely captivated. The actor portraying Paddington moved with perfect charm, his voice carrying the gentle wisdom that had made the character a treasure for generations. Kate could almost hear Charlotte's delighted gasp at Paddington's first appearance. She could picture Louis clapping his hands with uninhibited joy at the silly moments. George, trying to maintain his growing maturity, would probably have smiled despite himself at the cleverer jokes. As Paddington delivered a particularly heartwarming speech about the importance of kindness and finding family in unexpected places, Kate felt tears prick at her eyes, not just because the performance was beautiful, but because she was experiencing something magical that her children were missing, and she couldn't even share the full wonder of it with them later. The irony wasn't lost on her that Paddington's message was about the importance of family and being together, while she sat there keeping secrets from the 3 people she loved most in the world. When the performance ended, and she and William made their way backstage for the traditional meet and greet with performers, Kate found herself face to face with Paddington himself. The costumed performer stayed perfectly in character, offering her a small bow and speaking in the distinctive voice that had enchanted millions. "Your Royal Highness," Paddington said warmly, "it's an absolute pleasure to meet you. I do hope you enjoyed our little show." Kate smiled genuinely, though she felt the complexity of her emotions swirling beneath the surface. "It was absolutely wonderful," she said, "truly magical. You brought such joy to everyone here tonight." What she couldn't say was how much she wished 3 particular audience members could have been there to experience that joy firsthand. William stood beside her, chatting easily with the performers, but she could sense his awareness of her internal struggle. After 14 years of marriage, he could read her moods with remarkable accuracy. He knew she was fighting the guilt that came with enjoying something their children desperately wanted to experience. As they moved through the backstage area, meeting cast members from Les Miserables, chatting with comedian Jason Manford, who had hosted the evening, and greeting the various other performers who had contributed to the magical evening, Kate found herself mentally cataloging details, not for herself, but for the careful, edited version she would eventually share with George, Charlotte, and Louis. She would tell them that Paddington was indeed as wonderful as they had imagined. She would mention that the music was beautiful and that all the performers seemed genuinely kind. but she would have to leave out the part about how her face hurt from smiling, how she had laughed out loud at several moments, and how she had felt completely transported by the magic of live theater. The drive home to Adelaide Cottage was quiet, both she and William lost in their own thoughts as their security detail navigated the London streets. Kate stared out the window at the city lights, thinking about how different this evening might have been if they had made different choices. "You're thinking about them," William said finally, his voice gentle in the darkness of the car. "How can you tell?" Kate asked, though she wasn't really surprised he had noticed. "Because I am too." William reached over and took her hand. "We made the right decision, Catherine. Tonight was important for you, for us, for your return to public duties. Bringing 3 children would have changed everything." Kate squeezed his hand, grateful for his understanding, but still unsettled. "I know. Logically, I know you're right. But that doesn't make it feel right. What if," William said thoughtfully, "we found another way to give them their own Paddington experience? Something special, just for them?" Kate turned to look at him, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe we don't have to keep this secret forever. Maybe we find a way to turn tonight into something positive for them too." As they pulled through the gates of Adelaide Cottage, Kate felt something shift in her perspective. The warm lights in the windows told her that their children were safely home, probably asleep by now, probably having forgotten their disappointment in the way that children do when bedtime routines take over. The next morning, Kate woke with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. Over breakfast, as George, Charlotte, and Louis peppered her with questions about the performance, she found herself being more honest than she had planned. "It was beautiful," she told them, "and you know what? Watching Paddington made me realize something important." "What?" Louis asked, looking up from his cereal with interest. "I realized that sometimes the best way to experience something you love is to create your own version of it." Kate looked at each of her children in turn. "What would you say if we had our own Wales family Paddington Day? We could read all the books, watch the films, maybe even have a proper afternoon tea like Aunt Lucy taught Paddington." Charlotte's eyes lit up with excitement. "Could we really? Could we make marmalade sandwiches? And wear our best clothes?" Louis added, bouncing slightly in his chair. George, ever practical, looked thoughtful. "Would Papa join us too?" William, who had been listening from behind his newspaper, lowered it with a smile. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, though I should warn you, I've never made marmalade sandwiches before." "We'll teach you," Charlotte said, with the confidence of a 10-year-old who had watched enough cooking shows to consider herself an expert. Over the following weeks, the Wales family threw themselves into planning their Paddington celebration. Kate found that sharing her enthusiasm for the character, even without sharing the specific details of the Royal Variety performance, was more satisfying than she had expected. They watched the movies together, read the books aloud, and even planned a trip to Paddington Station to see the statue of the famous bear. The highlight was their afternoon tea, held in the drawing room of Adelaide Cottage on a rainy Saturday in December. Kate had found her mother's recipe for homemade marmalade, and the children had helped her make it from scratch. They set out their best china, wore their most formal clothes, and spent the afternoon talking in exaggerated, polite voices while consuming an enormous quantity of marmalade sandwiches. "This is much better than any performance," Louis declared with orange, sticky fingers, and Kate felt her heart swell with the truth of it. Later that evening, after the children had been tucked into bed and the tea things had been cleared away, Kate and William sat together in their sitting room, the fire crackling softly in the grate. "You know," Kate said thoughtfully, "I think I learned something important from keeping that secret." "What's that?" William asked, settling back into his chair with a cup of tea. "That sometimes the things we think our children are missing aren't nearly as important as the things we can create for them." Kate curled up in her favorite corner of the sofa, feeling more at peace than she had in weeks. The Royal Variety performance was wonderful, but today was better, because today was ours. William smiled, understanding exactly what she meant. And no one had to keep any secrets. Kate laughed softly. Well, except for the secret ingredient in the marmalade. Which was? Extra love, Kate said without hesitation. And maybe a little too much sugar. As they sat together in comfortable silence, Kate reflected on how her perspective had changed since that November evening at the Royal Albert Hall. She had thought the secret she was keeping was about protecting her children from disappointment, but what she had really learned was that the best experiences weren't the ones that were exclusive or difficult to obtain. The best experiences were the ones that brought families together, that created new traditions, and that filled ordinary moments with extraordinary love. The secret she had kept about the Royal Variety performance would remain between her and those two sweet twins who had looked at her with such trust. But the love she had discovered in creating their own Paddington celebration, that was a secret she would share with George, Charlotte, and Louis for the rest of their lives. And sometimes, Kate thought as she watched the fire dance in the grate, the secrets we keep teach us exactly what we should be sharing instead.